My name is Tim Schultz. I'm an IS lead professional, which is a very, very generic title, and you don't know what I do. So I'm a manufacturing solutions architect, which means I deal with plant floor systems, mostly on a level 3 kind of basis, dealing all the way up to the ERP solutions. Right, so I started recently in June of 2014, and it's been 8 months. As we were discussing, I kept getting it wrong. Time has flown quite a bit. I started back a while ago, and I'll get into that in a little bit. This is my first very large corporation. I worked at small to medium-sized companies before this. And so because you are here to hear what I think about things, you need to know a little bit about me. I'm 28 years old. Born in '86, married. I have 3 kids, 2 of them 5, and a 2-year-old. So it's busy at home and busy at work. So, speaking of busy, here's a busy slide. So I attended Kettering University, formerly GMI. I graduated with a bachelor's in computer science and a bachelor's in computer engineering. Those degrees are great. But the most important thing I got from Kettering was a co-op experience. I started immediately. I graduated high school in 2004 in June. I started at school in July at Kettering, and I was at work in September, right? And I immediately got shipped down to Mexico, which was exciting in its own right. But that continued. So I went to school for 3 months, and then I worked for 3 months. I worked for a system integrator, and I got a large variety of experience. And I think we've seen it throughout there. A co-op experience is pretty important. I think it gives a lot of benefit to both the company. If you get the right co-op student, of course, the company gets more benefit. But I think the co-op student themselves get a very large boost from it. So I hired on as a project engineer immediately after. I was doing control solutions, vision systems, single board computer development, all that kind of stuff. I worked there for a few years, and then I went to a small startup company, smaller, medium, making lithium-ion batteries. And that was cool, right? So you see there, why did I switch jobs? Money was part of it. That was not really key, right? Lithium-ion batteries is cool technology. I wanted to go do something really interesting. Maybe even make an impact on the world as a whole. A little bit idyllic. But then some opportunity, right? It was a smaller company. It was a startup. I had a lot of responsibility there at a relatively young age in my career. I stayed there for a few years. Things didn't go badly by any means, but I decided I was ready for a change. And so I came to Owen Corning in 2014, right? And so the reason I switched there is because the opportunity that I saw at the small startup was fine for the position I was in, but there was no growth, right? There was nowhere for me to go beyond what I was in. We had the leadership structure kind of locked in. It wasn't going anywhere, anything like that. So I came to a large corporation. There's stability, security in my job. And there's career growth. There's several career paths that if I want to pursue a career in IT, that's an opportunity. If I want to continue down manufacturing, that's an opportunity. So, and beyond that is responsibility. I went from being a senior development engineer to a solutions architect, which instead of dealing with 2 plants for most of the time, I now have partial responsibility for upwards of 70 plants. So it's a little bit of a step up there. So, as I said, I had 2.5 years of co-op experience, and I think that was tremendously helpful. The school itself, I'm still paying for. It will be for a while, but the experience itself, I think, is invaluable. So, coming to Owen Corning, here's the corporate blurb for you. Founded in 1938, so we've been around for a while. Multi-billion-dollar company, lots of employees, 25 different countries. I've been to a few of them already in the last 8 months. Been on the Fortune 500 for over 60 years. We have a pretty diverse business. There's several different kinds of facilities that I can go to, whether It's technical fabrics, which is kind of a woven product, insulation, which I'm sure you all know the pink stuff, and then our composites industry. So there was a lot of opportunity that I saw coming to Owens Corning. So, like I said, professional growth opportunity. It's definitely a move up in my career. There's a lot more opportunity in the future for me here. The responsibility, I have a lot more challenging work, I suppose. And then stability. The last company I came from went through bankruptcy, which was not really a fun experience if any of you have gone through that. So I wanted to touch on some things a little bit differently than the other presenters. And the kind of the things I saw transitioning to the workplace that should be maybe addressed through onboarding, some that were, some that weren't, and some of the challenges that I saw with that. So at Owens Corning, there is a very large focus on safety. It's one of our number one mission, right? That was something I had not seen to that extent at any other corporation and anywhere I had visited. You know, I've been to a lot of automotive plants, a lot of other manufacturing facilities. There's always a safety video. There's always wear your PPE, all that kind of things. But I've not seen anything to the extent that Owens Corning has in terms of a safety culture, which I think is fantastic. But one of the most interesting things to me is SOX compliance, right? There's all kinds of legal ramifications to things that you may not deal with at a smaller company. I don't know the extent of all the SOX compliance stuff that goes along with what I do sometimes. We have people to help with that, luckily. But, you know, I say specifically SOX here, but in terms of legal requirements and stipulations that a new employee might not be aware of what's going on, you know, beyond their little bubble of space. And so I mentioned that we have over 70 plants. There's an increased importance of standardization, right? With 2 plants, we could have some differences and it was very manageable. But when you start thinking about scale, it brings you to a whole other mindset. So I think it's important to cover that as part of the onboarding, just to make sure that people have their head right, I guess, going into it. So I think for me also, travel and work-life balance is a really important point to touch on. Be very upfront about it when you're hiring. Be open to it when your employees want to talk about it later on. So I have 3 kids, like I mentioned. My wife does not particularly appreciate me traveling all the time, but I still travel some. I had very little travel at my old job. I have significantly more here, about 30%. So it's something to be aware of and just up front make sure everybody knows. And then I went from a 24/7 support as I was a senior guy responsible for the MES system to we have a help desk system. So that's a little bit of a transition. I was used to being on call all the time, and so that took a while to break that habit for me personally, right? As I went from being always on call, I had my work, I had an iPad or my laptop with me all the time, and my phone was tethered, all that. And now we have a help desk, so you know I'm there if there's a serious issue, but we have an organization to take care of most of that. So kind of a cultural adjustment to make. To talk about the onboarding and mentoring process, I have a senior engineer who's more of the technical role, and then I have a project manager, more of the, I guess, buddy, friend, you know, helping you through all of the other stuff that's not necessarily related to the technical part. I found that it was ineffective. I think I had almost the same experience as Alyssa. Basically, it was really great when I looked at it. I had a 90-day plan. It looked fantastic, but I had too much work to do coming into it. I didn't have time to do it, right? There were many different plants that I was supposed to go visit, a few different tasks to complete, and instead I was off, supporting projects immediately, almost immediately. I think a month after I hired in, I was in Canada, and then I was in France, and then I was in Russia, Russia was a whole fun place. It's kind of a common theme, right? I guess Tyler had a good onboarding, but Alyssa and I seem to have had similar, that maybe we need to work a little bit more on the theory versus the actuality of the onboarding process. And I'm not saying mine was terrible. There were a lot of things that did get accomplished that were very useful, such as, all the internal systems that we use, all the HR systems, how I get access to information, get to training on my own, that kind of information. But in terms of getting prepared to do the work you're actually paid for, there was a little bit lacking. So, establishing relationships. I think it's important to expose yourself to a lot of different people all across the business, right? So from a manufacturing perspective, back when I was a system integrator, I didn't need to know the plant manager specifically. I could deal with my coworkers and they could handle that at a project manager level. But here, as an architect, I found that I need to be involved with the business just as much as the technical people to make sure that we're doing the right thing. So there needs to be some consideration of how your role is going to affect the business, what kind of areas you'll have an impact in, to make sure that you have the right knowledge, because there's not a lot of things worse than not knowing what you don't know, because you could really mess things up without intending to, right? So diving in, I'll talk a little bit more about that here. So I talked about keys to success of what I think is important when you move to a new role, right? Since I did this recently, I thought this would be nice to capture. Tyler talked about 3M loving acronyms, and I'm not sure if you guys love acronyms more than Owen Corning does. I asked repeatedly, do we have an acronym Bible? Anybody? They're everywhere. So new vocabulary, new processes, new everything, right? I came from a lithium-ion battery, which is completely different from making fiberglass, which is completely different from making cars. So, yeah, there's some time to learn, and you have to know that you're at a disadvantage. So you have to take the initiative and say, I don't know anything at this company, right? And you have to dive in. For the onboarding part, I think it's important that the employer try to make all the resources they can available to assist with this. And I'm not suggesting that you assign another project or another mentor or anything. I'm saying make a training website that really fits this, right? Something that everybody can access to learn. Acknowledging your newness to others in the company. People are really usually pretty great about helping you, right? If you go say, hey, I'm brand new here. I don't know what I'm doing, right? I need to get this done. How do I do it? That's usually they're gonna say, okay, maybe I can't help you right now, but I can give you 20 minutes and later today, something, right? But let them know that you're eager to contribute. You're there, you're getting paid to do something, right? Make sure you're doing it. Make sure other people know that you're doing it or want to do it. So this is kind of in line with the mentor discussion, but I think it goes wider than just a specific mentor. I think you need to foster culturally this idea that you need to help people, even if they've been there for years and years, that's fine. You can still help them, but make sure that you're open to helping others. It's for a key to kind of fitting in. Get involved with a project in your wheelhouse. So an example is I worked heavily in data visualization in the MES space, right? That was kind of my passion. And when I came to Owen Corning, I'm a manufacturing solutions architect. I don't do software development anymore. But there was a project that involved one of our plants that needed some data visualization done. So I volunteered. I said, hey, I want to do this. I can help. And I think that really sets up the atmosphere maybe to helping others acknowledge your newness, right? Show that you're willing to help, and that'll also encourage that cultural attitude. So, and then don't be afraid to ask for help. And this is another cultural thing. I can go search on how to do some of this SOX compliant stuff. We need change control numbers. We need X and Y and Z. I could spend 6 hours figuring it out on the internal website, or I could go sit down with somebody for 10 minutes. Realize your time is valuable. Your new employee's time is valuable. They're getting paid the same way as everybody else, right? So you're kind of obligated to help them. I'm not saying that you shouldn't try to learn things on your own, but realize the extent that you want to help your new people. It's a cost savings, right? So, kind of the millennial perspective. What am I looking for really in a job? What am I looking for in a position? I want to be able to innovate. I want a challenging and rewarding environment, right? Nobody likes to do really challenging projects all the time and then no recognition, nothing, right? You get burnt out that way. I've been there. It was, it's fun for a while, but after 2 years or 3 years, something like that, you just start to get burnt out, right? So, kind of related to that, the management-led sense of value, and I bolded value there because I think this is a key theme through the rest of this presentation. I want to feel valued by a company, right? I want to contribute, but I also want to feel valued. Say I'm getting training, I'm speaking at a conference, compensation, right? Those are all important ways to show that the company is investing in you, and you want to make it a good relationship. So last on this, but not least, is I want to make an impact. I want to make things better. I want to do something that's not busy work and it's not, a project for the sake of a project. I want to be making, maybe I'm driving our bottom line. Maybe I'm improving something for all of our operators, right? We want to make it easier for them to do their jobs, more ergonomic, safer, something like that. I want to see a measurable impact. So my last real slide, happiness factors. So Scott sent us this list of things as an example. What I did is I just put them together as a rank. And this caused a little bit of consternation at my company when I sent it out for approvals. But the most important things that I'm looking for, what's going to make me happy, is a work-life balance. I have children. I have a wife, I don't mind working weekends sometimes. I don't mind working evenings when there's a project, but respect my time, I'll respect yours. It's that kind of relationship. Job responsibilities. Because I want to be doing something challenging. I don't want to just be sitting around and doing the same project for the 15th time. And opportunities for learning. I don't want to ever stop learning. I want to keep growing in my career so that I can do better at whatever it is I'm doing. Second most important, salary and job security, right? It comes back to I have a family. The security is kind of important. I don't want to have to be looking for a job, missing paychecks, all that kind of stuff. The salary is important to a certain extent, right? I need to be making a competitive wage, but it's not as important definitely as what I have listed in one. Company prestige, company mission, they're important. I became perhaps a little cynical after the company I worked for. The mission's great, but sometimes the mission of the company isn't enough to make it worth working there, right? So the prestige, the mission, and then the relationship with supervisors. This is the one that caused a little bit of consternation. And it's important, I think, to have a relationship with your supervisors, but I think more importantly than the supervisors would be a relationship with your leadership as a whole. So I took this to mean your direct supervisor, your direct manager. And in my experience, I've not had a manager for more than, I think, a year and a half, right? It's because they're always in transition. It's a very volatile role. So when you get to your next level of leadership above that, it's a little less volatile, so you start making relationships with those people. And I'm not saying you don't talk to your supervisor, but I think that the relationship there is not as critical as it is of the upper leadership, the kind of the leadership culture, the management culture, I think is very critical. And I didn't list that up here, which I perhaps should have. That was the biggest issue I had at my last position, is that the senior top management were not leading a culture that I thought was appropriate, right? Everything coming down from them was not what my values were in line with, not the kind of work I wanted to be doing. So without that, it was very difficult to work there, for even as long as I did. So that's all I've got for right now. Thank you, guys.